The following is a CNN special report.
We all lost somebody yesterday. A mentor, a leader, our brother in blue.
A fallen hero.
G.I. Joe was a decorated police officer and our asset to our community.
A great mentor, great person, great father figure.
A massive manhunt.
We had over 400 law enforcement officers actively searching, and SWAT teams actively searching. We had over 45 canine units in the area.
A troubling past.
There was some issues in Joe Glinowitz's personnel files. There was a whole nother Joe Glinowitz that nobody knew.
An investigation that reveals astonishing answers no one imagined.
What was your reaction to that?
Holy crap.
Tonight, the secret life of G.I. Joe. Early morning on the first day of September in the resort town of Fox Lake, Illinois, Police Lieutenant Joe Glinowitz is heading to work. He'll never get there.
He stopped down the street. There's I believe it's a local gas station, Quick Mart. That was an everyday stop for him to purchase cigarettes.
Cigarettes in hand, the 52-year-old officer drives toward the community center that houses his Explorer Post, where he mentors teens who want to be cops. The program is run by Fox Lake Police, and today the lieutenant must finish an equipment inventory for the administrator who controls department finances.
He never went and did it. Instead, he drove past the Explorer Post and went to the cement plant.
He could have seen something in here. Maybe he thought he saw something, pulled in here to check it out.
Around 7:25 a.m., the GPS tracking unit in Glinowitz's car shows him pulling in front of this gate to the abandoned factory. 27 minutes later, at 7:52 a.m., the lieutenant radios dispatch.
5740 would be out to the old concrete plant check in the light, no black.
Can you get second unit?
Negative.
3 minutes later, he radios in again.
6740 needs to go.
10-4, did you need a second unit?
10-4, right, starts.
3 squad cars speed towards him.
I'm off the gravel road that runs between the cement plant and Honey Road.
It's a marshy area, thick with tall reeds and dense brush.
All of this was just greenery. I mean, you couldn't see through it at all.
No one can find Lieutenant Glinowitz.
6740, your status. Fox Lake Unit 6740, checking your status. Fox Lake Units on Honey, checking status on 6740.
We don't have him right now. We're looking for him.
Then, a distinctive bang.
One officer was military, says, I think that's a gunshot.
Officers on site charge into the thicket.
And they all go into the woods, down, straight down. It took them a little while to get down there because they were going through some thick brush and they weren't even sure where they were headed.
And they still don't see Glinowitz.
Foxcom from CENTCOM, have you made contact with your officer? CENTCOM, that's negative. 792 on location. Try him on his cell phone, please.
At 8:09 a.m., the radio transmission no officer wants to hear.
Officer down.
Lieutenant Joe Glinowitz, a 32-year veteran of the Fox Lake Police Force, an officer expected to retire in less than a month, is face down near the marsh. He's been shot twice. One bullet has hit the phone he wears above his right hip. The other tears through his chest, ripping apart a major artery. He's dead. About 200 feet from the lieutenant's body, his gear is scattered. It looks like there's been a struggle.
You had a pepper spray. This is a safety tab that was pulled from the pepper spray, and it was just laying here. Further down this path, there's a baton that's laying there.
Beyond the baton are Lieutenant Glinowitz's glasses, but they can't find his gun. Investigators fear the 3 men Glinowitz said he was following are armed and dangerous.
It was at breakfast in a neighboring town with our state senator. We got the word there was an officer down, and they couldn't get a hold of Joe. About 10 minutes later, I found out he had died. So that was, a crushing blow to me.
The lieutenant's pal, Fox Lake Mayor Donnie Schmidt, meets another friend at the police station. Together, they tell Glinowitz's wife, Melody, what happened.
The wail that went out of her mouth then will stay with me forever. She collapsed on the floor. She started becoming physically ill.
The horrifying news spreads quickly in this village of less than 11,000, and people here are stunned.
Joe was the cop's cop. This is the person that would never be gunned down. There was no way that this could have happened.
Couldn't happen because the lieutenant had more than 30 years with the police department and more than 25 with the Army. He was fit and tough, earning him the nickname G.I. Joe.
He always wore fatigues, he always wore combat boots, and he always had his military hat on. People would wave at him when he was driving through town. When he went into a restaurant, everybody walked up and said, "Hi, Joe." He was probably one of the town's biggest celebrities.
And a mentor to his explorers, young people like Morgan Gallowich.
That's what you have to do when you have people running at you.
Who he trained in police tactics and for SWAT competitions. Most of them call him LT.
He was just this person that no matter what was going on, you know you could be honest with him because he never judged you. He was like a father, he was always there, and it was really nice. I know I wasn't the only one. I know everyone told LT everything.
Here was this larger-than-life cartoon character named G.I. Joe who would take the youth under his wing of Fox Lake and teach them how to be like him in the future. And now that person was taken from them.
On the morning of September 1st, the village hero, the man who inspired the next generation to serve in law enforcement, lay dead near the old concrete plant on Honing Road. And his colleagues are massing quickly to track down 3 suspects they believe must be nearby. Ahead, G.I. Joe remembered.
We all knew Joe was a hero.
And revealed.
If I knew about that personnel file and I was a parent, I certainly wouldn't put my child in the Explorer program under his tutelage.
Fox Lake Battalion 22 has command rear order red.
In quiet little Fox Lake, Illinois, a local hero is dead. And officers are desperately searching for suspects. Things like this don't happen around here.
I don't want to say it's like Mayberry, but it's very Mayberry. It's very, very close-knit.
Residents and tourists are urged to stay inside as a massive, heavily armed search for suspects gets underway.
I'm gonna lock down the vet clinic here. 792, the school's on lockdown.
Police set up what they call a kill zone. 2 square miles centered around where shots have just been fired. It will be sealed off by hundreds of officers speeding toward the small village. Inside the zone, hundreds more. Above, 5 helicopters and a fixed-wing plane. All searching for the men they believe shot Lieutenant Glinowitz. Almost immediately, frightened citizens call in multiple sightings.
Someone from the treatment plant just called stating that these 2 subjects are near the treatment plant.
Got a call in from a female stating she saw a male subject running into a vehicle.
Inside the search zone, it's hot as hell, and dozens of the police officers are passing out.
It's a bog or a swampy area. The humidity that day was very intense. The temperature was in the 80s.
That night, a special chopper searches the zone.
They put helicopters up there with thermal-seeking devices to make sure that there was nobody in that area.
Nobody is there, and after more than 14 hours, the inch-by-inch search of 2 square miles is done. It looks like the suspects have gotten away. In 4 days, thousands of tourists will flood this lake village for a Labor Day weekend on the water, and police are still looking for 3 killers who could be anywhere.
The Boston bombers and everything that happened, they found them under boat covers. Look at the boat covers out here.
Despite the fear and uncertainty, about 1,200 people turn out for a quickly organized vigil the day after the shooting to remember the hero they called G.I. Joe.
When you cut him, he bled Fox Lake blue.
Among the mourners, explorer Morgan Gallowich.
I was so stunned that this was happening, that this was real, that this was like my mentor, you know? It was like losing a family member. It sucked.
Lieutenant Glinowitz's widow, Melody, is also there with their 4 sons.
Joe was my best friend, my world, my hero, the love of my life for the last 26 and a half years. He was the most wonderful, caring, and loving father to our boys. He will truly be missed by all of us.
I could not bear the sight of Miss G crying. I couldn't do it. She is such a strong woman, and I've never seen her like that before, and I didn't want to.
Later, that very night, about 5 miles south of Fox Lake, a call that sounds like the big break.
Lake County Sheriff's Office.
While I was outside looking at my car with the flashlight, 2 guys approached me and asked me if I was going to Wisconsin and asked me if they could get a ride.
The caller says she hops into her car to call 911 while 2 men in hoodies, one black, one white, run behind a garden center.
So you're feeling hopeful at this point that this could be something.
Initially, it did sound like it was something.
But it isn't.
The canines were not able to establish any sort of track. The aircrafts that were up in the air almost immediately weren't able to detect any sort of movement or heat sources. It was later learned through further investigation that she had fabricated the entire account.
Then another promising lead. Investigators believe they may have the 3 suspects Glinowitz said he was chasing on tape.
And they were all together in the video?
They were all together, and it was a great job that the FBI did from Quantico, and they just put together this sequential video.
The men are identified within 8 hours. And what seems like another great lead fizzles into nothing.
Couldn't have been a stronger alibi.
That alibi? Breakfast.
We have them on a video ATM withdrawal to get money to go to breakfast. We did a photo lineup with the waitress who identified all 3 of them. They left a pretty good tip. We have a credit card receipt.
Again, another huge disappointment for you.
Yeah, but you keep going.
Keep going, searching for a killer, trying to solve the mystery of what happened to Lieutenant Joe Glinowitz. Ahead.
His fatal gunshot wound was 2 inches under the top of his vest. How did that happen?
Labor Labor Day 2015 turns into Memorial Day in Fox Lake, Illinois, as thousands turn out for a big send-off to a big personality, their beloved G.I. Joe.
The way that Joe felt about this town, the way that town felt about Joe, really came out during that funeral, because it was such a funeral that was larger than life. It was massive.
When we were growing up, we all knew Joe was a hero. But now the nation knows he's a hero.
1,000 police cars join the procession. It stretches 5 miles, lasts several hours, and is lined with grieving spectators.
It was a tremendous outpouring from the community. I've never seen anything like that.
As Lieutenant Gliniewicz is being laid to rest, investigators are working overtime to locate who killed him. But what they find makes things more, not less, confusing. For instance, they discover Gliniewicz's service revolver 2.5 feet from his head between 2 trees. Why wouldn't a killer take the gun with him? Or throw it an extra couple feet into the swamp? Then there is a scattered gear at the site, which makes investigators believe there may have been a struggle. But why doesn't the lieutenant's body look like it's been in a fight?
What did you notice when you first saw the body?
The officer's clothes were in roll call order, meaning that his shirt was tucked in properly, his pants were for the most part clean except for a little mud on his knees. His bulletproof vest was in the proper position.
Something else that's unusual? How he was shot.
His fatal gunshot wound was between the first and second rib, but it was 2 inches under the top of his vest, which made one wonder, how did that happen?
At the crime scene, investigators are trying to figure out how someone could have gotten close enough to shoot the very tough G.I. Joe underneath his bulletproof vest.
We did every possible scenario you could imagine out here to try to explain, what happened.
Back at headquarters, they're digging through his personnel file looking for information. There, they make some astounding discoveries.
There was a whole nother Joe Gliniewicz that nobody knew.
The file is 264 pages thick, full of accolades and shocking information.
Let me put it to you this way. If I knew about that personnel file and I was a parent, I certainly wouldn't put my child in the Explorer program under his tutelage.
In May of 1988, Fox Lake Police Sergeant James Bush stated that he was called by a sheriff's deputy who found Officer Gliniewicz passed out in his truck on the side of the road, with the engine running full throttle, with his foot on the gas. Sergeant Bush wrote that he was summoned because a deputy couldn't wake Gliniewicz, and this was not the first time that something like this has happened. In 2003, a Fox Lake radio dispatcher claimed Gliniewicz joked about putting bullets in my chest. 3 weeks later, she claimed he brought a gun into the dispatch room. I don't appreciate someone cocking a gun or whatever he was doing, making clicking sounds with it, especially when that someone just recently joked about putting bullets in my chest. And there's more.
In 2009, some anonymous officers sent former Fox Lake Mayor Cindy Irwin letters saying they had, a list of grievances against Gliniewicz.
Among the many accusations, various members of the department have been approached by bouncers from different establishments and advised that Lieutenant Gliniewicz had been escorted from the establishment in a highly intoxicated condition. The letter goes on to claim that Gliniewicz did not pay a bar tab in excess of $300, that he took his family on vacation to Wisconsin in his squad car, and that on several occasions he inappropriately touched women, grabbed their breasts. Hardly qualities that describe a hero.
I've seen the personnel file, but if you show that to people, if you bring that out and show that to people, I don't think there'd be too many people who would actually believe some of the stuff that was in there.
But what may be most disturbing in the file is a reference to this lawsuit against the Fox Lake Police Department. It was filed in 2003 by a former female officer who claimed Lieutenant Gliniewicz pressured her to perform oral sex on him 5 times in the year 2000, saying that these sexual favors were strongly encouraged and/or required to protect her job. Gliniewicz was suspended 30 days. The lawsuit was eventually dismissed.
It's unusual for somebody to be a lieutenant and have supervisory authority with a personnel file looking like his.
In a document obtained by CNN, one of the officers involved in the Gliniewicz case describes a lieutenant as a golden child at Fox Lake PD, who must have had some dirt on someone to be able to stay with the police department. Current Fox Lake Mayor Donnie Schmidt says he didn't know what was in his friend's file.
I don't have access to our employees' files. The only time I look at a file is if there's a discipline problem. The 2 years I was trustee and the 2.5 years I was mayor, we never had a complaint on him.
The personnel file, while shocking, doesn't immediately change the way local authorities are looking at the Gliniewicz case.
It didn't get you thinking differently in terms of how he was killed?
No, other than coming up with another theory. If he had those types of issues, in particular with women or co-workers, then perhaps there was something else that was more nefarious out there. Maybe this was some kind of a vendetta involving a female.
Or maybe his death is connected to yet another secret. Ahead.
After another story came out of left field, and my boss looked at me and said, "This is just a complete circus." And it was.
Around the same time, investigators are learning about a seamy side of Lieutenant Joe Gliniewicz. Local coroner Dr. Thomas Rudd makes a statement about the town hero that begins to tarnish his public image. "I can't rule out a suicide. I can't rule out an accident. And I can't rule in a homicide," Dr. Rudd tells a local television station in Chicago.
Why'd you say that publicly?
Because I had no evidence to rule in homicide, suicide, or accident. So I said everything's open until the crime task force completes its work.
The suggestion that the shooting is anything other than murder sends Lieutenant Gliniewicz's family reeling. The lieutenant's second oldest son, DJ, a former explorer who followed his dad into the Army, adamantly dismisses the idea of suicide.
He has applied for several different chiefs' positions at police departments, and someone who wants to take their life, they don't plan a future.
It also doesn't make sense to the man in charge of the investigation.
Who would self-inflict one wound and then go and self-inflict the second wound? It's unheard of.
Then, more than a month after the shooting, investigators learn of a discovery made by the FBI on Gliniewicz's personal cell phone. It's a game changer.
When did you discover that he had erased thousands of texts?
We sent the phone out to Quantico, Virginia. I think it was into late October when we finally got those messages back, and it was 6,500 pages.
6,500 pages of recovered messages. And the information found there reveals multiple stunning misdeeds. Investigators say in the messages they learned Lieutenant Gliniewicz orchestrated a bogus marriage for his son, Army Specialist DJ, then 20.
Those messages were very specific, that this is a marriage facilitated by Gliniewicz. It was a sham marriage, and it was for financial reasons.
The Army gives married men larger stipends. The couple is now divorced. But the messages that interest investigators the most are the ones that suggest Fox Lake's hero law enforcement officer may have tried to arrange a hit on the new village administrator, a woman named Ann Marin.
When you read the text and you saw you wanted to put a hit on the village administrator,
Yeah.
what was your reaction to that?
Holy crap.
Commander Falenko is talking about a Facebook message from early April of 2015. In it, Glinowitz writes to a woman, being forced to retire by new village administrator. Work life has been a living hell the last 2 months. Close to entertaining a meeting with a mutual acquaintance of ours with the word white in their nickname. Investigators claim white is code for a high-ranking gang member. Authorities say when they interview the woman Glinowitz was messaging, she says the lieutenant told her he wanted a gang member to make a hit on Marin.
We actually located the person that we believe there was an attempt to recruit to do the hit.
What did that person tell you all?
That he was familiar with the area, that he knew who Glinowitz was, but we interviewed him in his attorney's office, and he denied any knowledge of any hit or anything like that.
Authorities say there is no additional evidence he pursued a hit on the administrator. The question is, why might a 32-year law enforcement veteran want somebody killed? Part of the answer may be found in the Explorer Clubhouse. There are boxes and boxes of military surplus gear, riot helmets, gas masks, and inserts for bulletproof vests.
Probably about 30 different radio holders.
Investigators say it was acquired by Glinowitz from an Army surplus program meant to better equip police officers, not young people in an after-school program.
The village administrator, she came down and she saw all these items and she was shocked by what she found.
So she confronts Lieutenant Glinowitz.
I asked him if he had an inventory of everything that was in that building, and he said, yes, ma'am. I said, can you get it to me by 2 o'clock today? He said, yes, ma'am. And that really was the end of the conversation.
That's Monday, August 31st, the day before Glinowitz's death. The same day he sends this text to his chief. She has now demanded a complete inventory of Explorer Central and a financial report. FML. FML is tech slang for F My Life.
Good morning.
Ann Marin is the first administrator with a keen eye on the budget. And it's not working for Lieutenant Glinowitz. The lieutenant also exchanges messages that day with his friend Donnie Schmidt, the mayor of Fox Lake.
As the night went on, he said he only had about a third of the inventory done. He was going to get his rear end chewed out the next day for not being done with the inventory. And I kept telling him, count to 10, breathe, relax.
All this anxiety, the contemplation of a hit. It can't all be tied to a large number of improperly acquired surplus items. There must be more. There is. Inside those 6,500 pages of messages are texts that suggest the highly admired law enforcement officer had been stealing from Explorer bank accounts for about 7 years. In June, he types to a person identified by investigators as individual number 1. Use the Explorer account for the flight, $624.70. CNN has learned individual number 1 is his wife, Melody. A few days later, he types to a person identified by investigators as individual number 2. You are borrowing from that other account. When you get back, you'll have to start dumping money into that account, or you will be visiting me in jail. The 1,600 and the 777 all came from there. CNN has learned individual number 2 is his son, DJ. According to family attorneys, Lieutenant Glinowitz had been depositing his own money into the Explorer Post bank account. Up next, a shift. A massive shift.
So just over a month after he died, that's when you're starting to think this may be something else.
Different, yeah. Yeah.
2 months ago, Fox Lake, Illinois was stunned, hunting desperately for 3 men they believed had killed their hometown hero. Now, November 4th, the authorities are ready to tell the world the final results of their investigation. It's a bombshell.
This extensive investigation has concluded with an overwhelming amount of evidence that Glinowitz's death was a carefully staged suicide.
Bombshells involving the death of Lieutenant Joe Glinowitz.
Everyone in that room was completely stunned.
In the room, shock reigns.
Commander, Lieutenant, Commander. You still insisted for 2 months that it was a homicide investigation first.
Our intention was never to mislead the public. We completely believed from day one that this was a homicide.
I gotta tell you, I mean, I was hearing from law enforcement folks, this looks like suicide.
We knew there were going to be a lot of questions about this, and no matter how long it takes, we want to get it right.
In and around Fox Lake, the news devastates the lieutenant's friends and supporters.
I didn't want to believe it at all. I didn't want to accept the fact. I didn't want to hear about it. I didn't want to listen to anyone say it. I didn't want to hear it. You don't know how to feel. You feel so pissed off and you feel so betrayed, and you don't understand it.
After 9 weeks of investigation, authorities now believe they know what really happened on that first day in September. G.I. Joe was not who they thought, and his death was no accident.
The first shot takes place here. The crime lab estimates it was anywhere from, I believe, 3 to 6 inches out. The initial impact is absorbed by the telephone.
Lieutenant Glinowitz's work phone, the one he is wearing above his right hip.
And it goes through the telephone and is absorbed through the vest.
Not fatal, but painful.
It would be similar to that of a sledgehammer hitting you in the side.
Dazed, but not badly hurt, police believe Glinowitz then does the unthinkable.
You're literally taking your hand and you're shooting downwards under your vest.
To Commander Falenko, 2 shots originally suggested homicide.
Who would shoot themselves twice? We found out his high tolerance for pain. One of the interviews we had with his wife, she indicated when he was in pain, he would be in a different place.
That explains how the lieutenant was able to kill himself, but there are still some ends that need to be tied up. The gun is found 2.5 feet from his head, placed between 2 trees. If Lieutenant Glinowitz shot himself, how did the gun get there?
This fatal shot did not hit the heart. It hit the pulmonary artery. He could have lived up to 2 minutes, and that was a key piece of information.
He shot himself standing at a downward angle under his vest, dropped the gun, and still had enough to walk a couple of feet and fall down face first.
And what about the lieutenant's gear? It seemed to be tossed everywhere, indicating a struggle.
This is what he did. He trained explorers. I mean, they have these competitions where they stage crime scenes.
Lieutenant Glinowitz had staged scenes right here before.
The concrete plant is where we do the majority of our sniper training. He knew it like the back of his hand.
What do you make of the fact that he bought 2 packs of cigarettes that morning before he went to the concrete plant?
If you're going to stage something, you want to give the perception of everything is business as usual.
Investigators now know how he did it, but why? The answers, they say, are in the texts he tried to delete. Texts that suggest he was lying, stealing, and feared getting caught.
He used this Explorer account as his personal account. A lot of what these monies were spent on were very unusual. Health clubs, Starbucks, adult websites, plane tickets.
In other words, not expenses for a group of teens.
No, not pizza parties.
In the end, investigators say he stole thousands from the people who trusted him the most, his beloved explorers.
I would have done anything that I possibly could have to help him. I think a lot of people would have helped him too if he would have asked for help. I just think he was very prideful, and I think that's what ultimately led up to making his decision. He didn't want to ask for help.
The police officer's thought process, his persona, his reputation out there in the community is more valuable than anything. So he's trapped. And he comes up with the scenario of, if I go out as a hero, and even if they do discover all of this in the end, the hero is going to outweigh the zero.
Ahead. Did Gliniewicz act alone, or did he have help?
Our investigation strongly indicates criminal activity on the part of at least 2 other individuals.
Behind a gate, down a gravel road, a blue cross now marks the spot near where Lieutenant G.I. Joe Gliniewicz died. Once shrouded in mystery, what happened here has come to light.
Do you have any doubt whatsoever about the suicide determination?
No, this is a suicide.
You're 100% certain it was suicide?
100% certain.
But the end of the death investigation isn't the end of the story.
Our investigation strongly indicates criminal activity on the part of at least 2 other individuals.
No arrests have been made, but investigators are looking at Joe Gliniewicz's wife.
The accounts of Melody Gliniewicz have been frozen by the Lake County State's Attorney's Office, so one could piece together that Melody Gliniewicz would be under investigation.
The woman who wailed with grief the day her husband died learned her accounts were frozen when she went to gas up her car in November, and her card was denied. In a press release, her attorneys say Melody respectfully requests that the community, law enforcement, pension board, and press refrain from rushing to or misplacing judgment. Melody has faith that the truth will come out in time and, if necessary, in court. The judge in the case has requested both sides not to comment further. Nearly $40,000 has been released to her since then, but a freeze is still in place. There's a hearing scheduled next month to see if it will be permanently lifted. When asked about the case by CNN, Gliniewicz's attorneys would not comment. And what about the boxes and boxes of military surplus items in the Explorer Post basement?
Are there items that are missing? We don't have any proof that he sold any items, but if there are items that aren't there, that should be there, it raises that question, where did they go?
Fox Lake is in the process of trying to figure out what the lieutenant did with all the surplus items he acquired. New leadership has been installed in the Fox Lake Police Department, and town officials have told CNN they are reviewing all current policies of both the police and the village. As for the Explorer Post Gliniewicz loved, the one from which he allegedly embezzled, it has been disbanded.
With it being under investigation, we just felt it was best to go on hiatus until we can restructure, the investigations are done, and we'll start with a clean slate.
We have to turn in everything that says Fox Lake Police and/or Explorer Post on it. It's difficult.
The young people who G.I. Joe Gliniewicz seemed to care about so much are perhaps his biggest victims.
That's the part of me that, that doesn't like LT anymore. That's the part of me that makes it very difficult to miss him. And for him to do this and to leave us in the position that we've been in, It's difficult. Very difficult.
Despite all that, her opinion of the man called G.I. Joe hasn't changed.
He will forever be my hero. He wasn't Superman, but pretty damn close.
To investigators, he's an officer who committed the ultimate betrayal. He dishonored his badge.
It was a slap in the face to all of us. The people who stood up and came to the memorials and came to the police department and dropped off cards, flowers, added to the memorial. You had police officers that traveled from across this country to attend his funeral. People from the community that traveled across this country to attend his funeral. And it was all for a lie.
He dishonored what we all swore an oath to uphold. He betrayed not only our profession, but his entire community. It was the first time I could actually tell you in my entire career that I felt ashamed to be a police officer. This one will haunt me for, at least the rest of my career and probably beyond,